TradeSquare is Australia's first business-to-business marketplace connecting people, brands and organisations into this diverse ecosystem in a unique global landscape. Through pivoting, transforming and reshaping, Australian businesses have an opportunity to create the model for the future that aligns with the world's needs and leveraging the power of a collaborative approach. Through the TradeSquare podcast, we will bring together dynamic, diverse and thought-provoking leaders from business, government and organisations to have conversations to further enable new thinking for the future. Welcome to TradeSquare, Australia's leading business-to-business marketplace. I'm Catherine van der Meulen and joining me today is Fiona Anson, Enterprise Learning Lead at the University of Technology, Sydney. How are you, Fiona?
I'm really well, Kath. Nice to be here.
Now tell us, who is Fiona Anson?
Well, I guess you'd best describe me as a bit of a business junkie. I've owned my own businesses for the last 25 years, and they've been across a variety of industries, from management accounting business to consulting and coaching businesses. And the last one that I had was a tech startup in the jobs and skills space, which was sold in 2019. I love business. I just love it. So I also mentor tech startups through a couple of different programs. One is called Tech Ready Women, which is obviously for women with new business ideas. Another one is called Remarkables, which is an incubator program for startups in the disability sector. And I also mentor startups at UTS as part of their UTS Startups program.
You said you love business. Tell us about the things that you love the most about business holistically.
I think it's the ability to ideate, to come up with or to find a problem and to come up with a solution. So I particularly love startups because you're always looking for what is that challenging business problem or community problem or person problem that I'm trying to fix. And I think it's my innate curiosity that kind of leads me to come up with solutions.
I love the word curiosity, so I'm so glad you threaded that one through. So tell us about your call to adventure to joining UTS.
So UTS, I've had a relationship or an affiliation with UTS for probably around about 7 years. So as I mentioned, I mentored their startups. They started a program about 7 years ago called Hatchery, which was for startup businesses, and they asked me to be a mentor at that program. That's now kind of evolved into what they call UTS Startups. So I've been mentoring there for about the last 7 years. And I also sit on the advisory board for UTS's Advanced MBA program. But it was a couple of years ago that through a conversation I was having with one of my colleagues at UTS, I found out that they were looking to develop more in the corporate learning space. And they reached out and asked me for some help. And I guess given I have my finger on the pulse of kind of work and jobs and skills, which is the area that my last startup was in, and in particular what industry was looking for, they asked me if I would like to come up and help them lead this kind of new area of business. And kind of when you couple that with something new, which answers my need for curiosity, and I guess my experience of the last 10 years working in that jobs and skills market, it was just a perfect fit for me.
So with a strong focus on education through upskilling and reskilling, how has the university really responded to the shifts that are happening in the world?
Look, I think it's been a challenging time for everyone, certainly, obviously, over the last year or so when we've been challenged with the pandemic. It's a rapidly changing world. Nobody would disagree with that. And the pandemic has just simply taken us to warp speed. And the university, like I guess all businesses, has been affected by COVID. For us, international students literally disappeared overnight. And we had to take all of our learning in March of last year online in a matter of days. So obviously the campus was closed, the students weren't here, and we still had to deliver learning. So it's been an area that, it's been turmoil for the university like it has for every other business. In particular, in the area I work in, which is the corporate learning area, this has been a big new focus for UTS as well. So they have recognised, to their credit, that it's not just people that need skilling, it's organizations that now need skilling. And there are more and more companies that need to look at not only skilling their people, but reskilling their people so they meet their needs for the future. And they need to do that fast. So we as an organization have had to look at how do we do that? Our learning has been traditionally long forms of learning. So undergraduate or postgraduate degrees that might take 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, that doesn't suit companies anymore that are looking to move really quickly. So we've had to look at how do we build shorter forms of learning that enable organizations to rapidly upskill their people. So UTS have developed and are continuing to develop short courses in a whole bunch of different areas that are specifically suited to this particular need. That's that rapid upskilling for organizations.
You mentioned skilling for the future of work. Can you explain what the future of work for you really looks like?
Well, it's really interesting question, Kath, because nobody knows what the future of work looks like. We know that automation is affecting lots of different jobs. We know that we need to be more literate in areas of data. We know that AI is making a huge impact in business. So I guess the future of work is going to be very technology driven. So people need to have a base level of technology skills now that they never had to have, maybe even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly 30 years ago. But as in terms of what it's going to look like in the future, it's a really big question mark. And because the way things change as rapidly as they do, we can't even look back 5 years and say, well, 5 years ago it looked like this, and so in another 5 it's going to look like that. It's just changing too fast for anyone to make any predictions, which is again why we have to move to short forms of learning, because we're not going to have the time luxury that we had in the past. I think the future is going to be about innovation and embracing rapid change.
And so, what are some of the key projects and initiatives that you've been working on that have really redefined how you support Australian businesses through education?
There's a whole bunch of projects that I've been fortunate to work on, but there's a couple that kind of stick in my mind. One in particular is for Telstra, who came to UTS about a year and a half ago now, and they needed to upskill over 1,000 of their employees, specifically in data analytics, machine learning, and data engineering. And this was to allow Telstra to be able to offer an expanded range of technology services to their customers. So we got involved with Telstra and actually started working with them to specifically understand what they need, and then to actually co-design courses that specifically suited the needs for Telstra contractors and employees. And that was employees and contractors in over 6 countries. And so it allowed them to upskill those people specifically in those areas. And the people they were looking at were software engineers and network engineers that didn't necessarily have any of these specific data skills. So that was a really interesting project on a large scale, on a global basis, that was a challenge for everybody, for Telstra and certainly for us, where we've never delivered that volume of learning globally before. The other project, there's another one that I'm really interested in at the moment, and that is a project where we're developing courses, workshops and masterclasses for industries that are looking at how to develop AI, and specifically the ethical challenges for AI moving forward. So this particular range of products are currently being delivered in 4 countries outside of Australia, and also within Australia, of course. And the reason I love this is because I'm actually learning so much as well. This whole area of AI development and the ethical challenges moving forward is absolutely fascinating. And I can sit on a Zoom call with our academics when we're talking about what these courses need to look like, and I'm just absolutely captivated by the challenges we're going to face moving forward as AI becomes part of everyday life. So they're kind of 2 of the projects I think that are really in my sweet spot right now.
And so, what are some of the key steps that really enable businesses to create a successful learning and development culture?
This is a really interesting question, because there's a lot of businesses that I still think haven't really embraced this yet, and they really need to moving forward, because there is, as I said, an increasingly rapid rate of change happening at the moment, and it's only going to get faster. So lifelong learning has to be the backbone of, I think, every organisation, and I think every person. We have to understand that lifelong learning is here to stay, and it's integral in helping both businesses and ourselves keep pace with the future. So basically, future-proofing ourselves. Businesses that I think create that successful learning culture not only have better skilled employees, quite obviously, but they also have better employee loyalty, meaning the costs of recruit, they don't have to continually recruit people, their costs in recruitment are lower. There's some key steps to creating that successful, what we call L&D, or learning and development culture. And there's kind of four that I kind of nutted out a little bit earlier. The first one is to encourage curiosity for employees and actually embrace a culture of failure. So organisations that play it safe are not going to be the ones that succeed in the future. They've got to enable employees to be curious and let that curiosity lead them in places that perhaps they won't succeed in, and to know that that's okay, because it encourages that curiosity without repercussion. The second thing is to provide a range of areas and learning pathways that people can move into. You never know as an organisation which of your employees might have an interest that they don't even know that they have. By providing a pathway to people to say, you know what, there's a range of things you can learn in this organisation. You might find that that person who's maybe currently on the shop floor might become an amazing data analyst because you've given them a chance to explore areas that perhaps aren't necessarily in the area of what they do on a day-to-day basis. So kind of encouraging people to explore their own pathways. The third one is to recognise that learning happens in lots of places. So obviously places like UTS, we've got everything from custom-iron and co-design courses to ranges of public courses. However, organisations need to understand that there's also power in peer-to-peer learning. So encourage within the organisation that culture of learning. Maybe introduce things like lunch and learns, or encourage people to get together and share their knowledge. I think that's another really strong way to build that L&D culture. And lastly, I think rewarding and recognising people that go out of their way to bring benefit to your company by learning is really, really important. And it encourages that learning mindset. So I think organisations that do that then build up that curiosity in their workplace, and therefore they hopefully will be at the forefront of what they need to do to future-proof themselves moving forward.
And Fiona, what's a key message that you are super passionate about, that you are advocating and championing through your work at UTS?
I think the key message for me is that there is only one thing that's certain moving forward, and that's change. And that we shouldn't be frightened of it. That, the robots aren't taking over anytime soon, despite what everybody, all the headlines that you see, they're not taking over anytime soon. We still have a lot of control over what we do moving forward, but it is changing. And so I think we need to embrace that change and be, that favorite word, be curious, embrace long life learning so that you are future proofing both yourself and the organization that you work for.
And what are some of the hot topics at UTS at the moment that you are excited about?
There's a few that really tweak my interest. There's a lot happening in the health space that's really exciting, and obviously because of COVID, that's become a renewed focus, obviously, for everybody. There's some really interesting new technologies around immunology and pathology, so that's super exciting. Data and analytics is obviously right in UTS's sweet spot, being a university of technology. And that's an area where we are building an expanding catalogue of learning, because we know that there is a massive shortage of data talent. In fact, every organisation we talk to, they tell us that we've got all this data, we don't really know what to do with it, and we don't really have the people that know what to do with it. So that's an area that I think holds huge potential. And the other one, as I mentioned earlier, is this whole area of ethics in AI. I just find it simply fascinating. And it's going to be more fascinating as we start to use algorithms to make decisions. I mean, I had a great discussion the other day about driverless cars and the decisions that need to be programmed into driverless cars when it comes to risk. We've got some amazing minds at UTS that are absolute specialists in this field, and I could talk about this sort of stuff for hours. I know we don't have that amount of time to do it, but it's a fascinating area.
And what are some of the ways that you actively challenge the status quo in your role?
Questioning. I'm always questioning. I'm always questioning, what does industry need? How do we know what they need? How are we going to deliver that? And how are we going to do that better than we did it yesterday, or that we did it, how are we going to do it better than somebody else is going to do it? I guess it's probably fair to say that I am a constant status quo challenger. And like any organisation, especially, in the times we find ourselves in at the moment, we've been very challenged, and we've been very challenged to move faster. And so we're always looking at how can we do that better. And so I think that's I get up every morning and think to myself, how do we do this better than we did it yesterday?
TradeSquare over the last couple of months has really been focused on celebrating women and around the theme of choose to challenge. How do you choose to challenge in your role?
I think it's that curiosity, Kath. It's that being driven by how could we do this better. I mean, in fact, I've kind of been that kind of person the whole of my life. I've done it in every business and in every job I've ever had. I guess I'm basically a problem solver. And to do that, you've got to not only challenge yourself, but you've also got to challenge others, but you've got to influence others as well. So you can't just charge forward like a bull at a gate and say, here's this challenge, here's this problem. I'm curious about how we're going to fix it. We're going to do this. You've actually got to take people along on the ride, and you've got to do that in a really positive way, especially in a large organisation such as the UTS, and it's a big monolithic organisation. So for me, it's all about how do we help everyone here embrace the vision, define the vision, and then become passionate about making that happen. So in terms of choosing to challenge, it's challenging myself, it's challenging other people, and it's challenging us to move to a better future.
Well, thank you so much, Fiona, for sharing your world and your wisdom and your reminder of how important lifelong learning truly is.
Thanks, Kath. It's been my absolute pleasure to talk with you today.
For more information on TradeSquare, head to www.tradesquare.com.au and support Australian business economic recovery and growth with a collaborative approach to the future of business.